guys, today's lecture is on tort remedies for environmental problems. Okay? You ever been in an elevator and somebody just, farts, right? That's an environmental problem, right? You ever been in a lake and then you see some trash just floating in the lake? That's an environmental problem. You ever been in your room at home and then your mom comes banging on the door, demanding to know what's going on? That's an environmental problem. Or your sibling in the other room blasting the radio? That's an environmental problem. So what is an environmental problem as opposed to what? Why do we call them environmental problems? What isn't an environmental problem? Yeah?
Me stubbing my toe.
You stubbing your toe in your own house, that's a personal injury you occurred. Environmental problem is anything that affects the environment that you're in. Okay? The title of this class is also a tort remedy for environmental problems. What is a tort? What is a tort? Anyone speak French? What is a tort?
Like in Tartu, a turtle?
No, T-O-R-T. Tort comes from the French for harm. So, an environmental tort is an environmental harm. And then a remedy is a legal solution to a tort. Make sense? So we've got environmental problems happening. And now we've got the solutions. How are we going to figure out these solutions? So, I'm going to talk about 3 kinds of environmental problems today. And this isn't an exhaustive list, but I think it's general enough that you can piece together other more complicated issues. The first I'm going to call trespass. Trespass. You have some land, and you have a backyard for your house, and there's no fence covering a part of it. And or there is a fence actually. I hop over the fence, cross your backyard, and then hop over it again to go to my house on the other side. You didn't even have grass. Let's say you didn't even have grass on your land. There was just some dirt. I just walked over your dirt. I jumped over your fence. If you didn't see me do it, you would never have known. Is that trespass? Who says it isn't? Good. We all know what trespass is. Trespass is any sort of transgression or infringement or stepping on or touching someone else's property without permission. Without permission. Trespass is any sort of touching of someone else's property without permission. We talked about tort issues. There was no harm in this case, no personal harm. Even if there's no personal harm, even if there's no noticeable harm, if someone still walked over it, it's still trespass. But oftentimes people usually get upset about trespass when there is a harm. So there's a case in New Brunswick happened in the late 70s where a family was out in the field. They were tending to the garden, and then the government was flying planes spraying pesticides for the trees. And then some of these pesticides landed on their property, on this family's property, and their young son had like an asthma attack. That's a trespass. And the family was able to sue the government in order to get some money. In 1978, they got about $1,200 worth. And is $1,200 in 1978 worth the same today?
No.
No. Why?
Inflation.
Inflation. It'd be worth about $4,500 today. So on this inflation point, always, if you're going to be talking about money from previous periods of time, always want to take account of inflation. There are lots of inflation calculators online. The Bank of Canada has a nice inflation calculator. I urge you to use that. And of course, inflation is local as well, right? So each country has its own inflation rate. That was a nice detour. But with trespass, the important thing is any sort of touching of someone else's property is trespass. It doesn't matter if it's the person, that's a trespass. If it's an object that they own, if it's land, if it's anything else. Trespass if it's just touching without permission. Next we're going to talk about nuisance. Nuisance is your neighbor playing loud music. Nuisance is someone in the elevator farting it up. Nuisance, there has to be some sort of harm. It's the harm, the standard there is that it stops you from using or enjoying your property. Using or enjoying. If it stops you from using or enjoying your property, that is a harm, and that counts as a nuisance. Nuisance can get pretty tricky. So with nuisance, we have, you can sue someone for nuisances that they've done to you retroactively. So if someone has been playing loud music for over a month, and you've asked them to stop several times, and then after a month you go and take it to court, that's when you can sue them for a month's worth of nuisances. Trespass is only a certain point. The remedy for nuisances can vary across a lot of different things, but injunction is one thing. So, nuisance remedies. Injunction. Injunction means that the court tells the other person to stop. They have to stop. If they don't abide by the injunction, that's when the court can also levy other fines and other threats and ramp up the solutions that way. Something else. People like to have a lot of excuses. So first of all, with nuisances, the cost, the harms, the rule is they can't be trivial harms. But as we talked before, value is subjective, so what counts as trivial is very contextual. Even road salts have been deemed as a nuisance in cases like this for icing. But the issue is that how do you defend against claims of nuisance? So you can say, you have say something is like, so as a defense, you can say it was reasonable use. Reasonable use sometimes flies, but if your reasonable use is deemed to be negligent, then you can be filed under, you can be still sued, and you can be found guilty, and you can be found to be strictly liable. Strict liability. So the example would be, say you put up a tower in your property, and you took every reasonable precaution to make sure that tower doesn't fall over. Every reasonable precaution so the tower doesn't fall over. But something happens and the tower falls over. Totally unforeseen, a big accident. Are you liable for that nuisance of your stuff falling into your neighbor's property? Under strict liability, the answer is yes. If you can't make a reasonable defense, then you're going to be found negligent. Negligent means you didn't take any reasonable precautions, and it was due to your own errors, your own hubris, that someone else got harmed. Any questions so far? There's some people also claim that as a defense, that they spent a lot of money trying to prevent some costs. They spent a lot of money trying to do their own thing, and then that someone else got harmed. They only are losing a couple bucks. So there was a famous case where a big paper mill factory went up, and the paper mill factory cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, or millions in today's dollars. It's a long time ago case. And someone down the stream, they started suffering damages in their water. And then the paper mill said, look, your damages are tiny. If I have to shut down my plant, I lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. People lose their jobs, all this crap. And the judge will rule, that's your problem. You should have figured this stuff out before you set up your shop and before you were creating all these environmental problems for others. That brings us to our third type of environmental problem, which is riparian. This is your word of the day, riparian. Who knows what riparian means? Riparian owner, or riparian rights. It's related to what we were just talking about. A riparian owner is someone who owns property on a river. Riparian means you own property by a river. There's water flowing, and you own parts of that river, or you have some sort of rights to that river. Riparian. When you have riparian rights, no one is allowed to do three things. So what's banned is any attempt to obstruct, divert, or corrupt your use of the river. This is not allowed. So that's the paper mill example. Someone upstream set up a factory and they were dumping in the river. Downstream, people were upset. They were corrupting the river for other people downstream. If they also had set up a dam upstream so that no more water would be flowing, that's also a violation of riparian rights. Or if they created another river, artificial, so that all the water upstream would flow another direction, depriving people downstream of the river, then that would also be a violation of riparian rights. Any question on riparian rights? Interesting. So, let's say you own surface of the earth. Let's say you own some property here. This is your property. This area. This is your property. And then someone next door. This is your neighbor. They find out that they have some gold. It's G for gold. Under their property. So they start digging. And they dig down, and they dig further, and they find out that this gold property actually goes under here. So this is all gold. Gold. And if you drew a line down here, some of that gold is under your land. Do you own that gold? It's under your land. You had no idea it was there. Your neighbor spent all the time and money to dig through their land, and then they excavated it, and they put all the dirt on their own property. And they were very careful so as to not cause any nuisance to you, so that your house didn't shake during the thing and there was no noise. Do you own any of that gold under your land? Who says yes? Who says no? Just one. Interesting. Oh, two. Okay. So why do you say no?
Don't you like technically only own so much like property below you, and like if you're actually in bigger and you need to get some of these permits and everything, so like technically you can't like cover everything?
Let's say we live in a world where you don't need any permits to dig. No.
Okay.
Do you have an idea why do you own that gold? Or why do you start not own that gold?
Has he been exercising any like actions to get my goal? Didn't put any of your personal effort into that goal?
Interesting. So who, for the people who had your hands up as that you did own that gold, who can tell me why you think you own that gold? Yes.
Well, if your neighbor's logic was that it's under their property, so it's theirs, then same should go for you. If it's under your property, it's yours.
Okay. Someone have a different idea? Yeah.
Because when you bought the property, you bought everything that's on it.
So that's on it, so this is, you're on the surface of it. So you mean also underneath it as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone have a different idea? Okay. So I will tell you that for most legal cases here, we subscribe to something called the ad colum doctrine. This is an ancient Roman doctrine, which means that you own a column, but we know now that the earth is a sphere, right? So you own a cone. If this is your land on the earth, you own a cone up to the center of the earth, and then a column up. So you own everything up there too, so that if you had someone else flying an airplane 10 kilometers above your land, and that's a little plane, they're trespassing against you as well. So that's the ad colum doctrine. Can anyone tell me if the ad colum doctrine is that utilitarian, pragmatic, classical liberal, libertarian, or legal positivism? Yes?
I'd say classical liberalism.
Classical liberal? Why?
Because it's sort of it's like enforcing the idea of property rights and the I guess that by defining boundaries, it sort of enforces the principle of like it sort of makes property rights more concrete.
Okay, so that's fair. Anyone have a different idea? Yes?
Would it be legal positivism because the right to that region was given to you by sort of state-defined boundaries?
Okay. Could it be also pragmatic? Could it be also utilitarian? Everybody who owns land gets to own the most amount of property? Will anyone say this is libertarian? No one says that this is libertarian. So you can justify the ad coelum doctrine using any doctrine other than libertarianism. The libertarian doctrine follows something called homesteading. Then we talked about homesteading before, where you're mixing your labor with the land if it's unowned property. And unowned means you don't have control over it, physical control. So because this is so far below your property and you previously had no connection to it, no physical connection to it, other than the happenstance that it was underneath you, then we would say under libertarian doctrine that nobody owned this gold until your neighbor dug through it underneath. And for the same reason, that if there was no nuisance or there was no nuisance above your property in the sky, then your rights don't automatically extend up until the heavens. Yes?
So homestay is saying if there's no physical contact with whatever is above or below or within, then it's not yours.
Unless you've made physical contact with something, then you haven't owned it. So that's homesteading. So this is versus homesteading. And how do you make contact with the air? You could build a tower. You could send up rockets up and down your thing so that you just establish some sort of use with the physical space above you. Most of us don't use 10 kilometers of air above us. So under the homesteading principle, this ad coelum doctrine would be irrelevant. Let's talk about something called joint and several liability. Joint and several liability. Everyone heard of this expression before? No? So joint and several liability means if multiple people are responsible for some outcome, some tort, some harm, then all of them are together responsible and individually responsible. An interesting facet here is that if multiple people are responsible for harming you, you have the right to only sue who you want to sue. You don't have to sue them all individually or collectively. So that's a bit confusing. So say you have a property in the middle of some land somewhere, and then suddenly 10 factories open up around you. But because of the way the wind is blowing, all the smoke from all those factories, only one factory is blowing their smoke over you. Say it's the sriracha factory. And the smoke from the sriracha factory is so intense because of the spices in the air that it makes your eyes water and all this stuff. So even though all those other factories are responsible for polluting your air, you only choose to sue the sriracha factory. Related to this is something called limited liability. Who's heard of limited liability? You've all heard of limited liability? Limited liability is a type of contract where people enter into that limits their own individual liability by creating a third party, another entity, that then takes on all of that liability. So limited liability, we hear about it as a LLC, limited liability corporation. Right? Let's talk about corporations a little bit. What is a corporation? What are some ideas on what a corporation is? We all deal with corporations all the time. What's a corporation? Yes?
Like a group of people who all have the same goal of work or something?
So is a family a corporation?
No, like individually or
Okay.
together.
It's like a basketball team?
No.
No? Yes?
Something considered legally a person.
You gotta speak up.
Legally a person?
Legally a person, yes. So that's one of the factors of being a corporation. You have a legal person. The other is limited liability. And the third is, can anyone guess? Is perpetual life. Perpetual life. A corporation is an organization created through contract that has limited liability, is legally a person, and has perpetual life. It's not going to die. Why would someone create a corporation? Yes?
To pass on their liabilities.
To pass on their liabilities, to limit their liabilities, yes? Why else would you create a corporation? How about convenience? Right? So if you and 10 friends want to create a corporation, start a business, and then who's going to be in charge of all the money? Right? Is it all going to go into one person's bank account? Or do you create a joint bank account for 10 people and you give that bank account a name? Coca-Cola Corp. What about convenience for people who have been harmed by this corporation? If you've been harmed by a UPS driver, truck driver runs you over, guy making $40,000, $50,000 a year. Is it better for you to sue that individual truck driver? Or would you rather sue all the shareholders of UPS, and there's hundreds of thousands of them, right? Or would you just sue the one corporation of UPS? It's convenient for you to just sue the one corporation of UPS that has the millions of dollars, so you can collect as much damages as possible. And you also save on the convenience of having to sue all those hundreds of thousands of shareholders as well. Questions? Yes?
So when you say LLC, because it's a limited liability corporation, are you saying that like the individuals that run the corporation aren't taking responsibility that the corporation is, or that there's another third party?
So liability means that if the corporation does damage, it's the corporation who is liable. It's their assets that are liable to be seized or paying damages from. But there's limits to that too. So by statute, we say there are some limits that if you do something through a corporation, but the corporation doesn't meet some criteria, then we go after the shareholders as well, individually. But that's rare and special cases. Generally, these are the situations. You have a limited liability so that if the corporation does something bad, then the corporation is what's responsible, not your house. The assets of the corporation are what are going to be subject to remedies, and not your house, not your own personal bank account. Yes?
So like having a corporation, like you wanna have that before you start like a business or anything, so you get like a secure like backup kind of?
Sometimes. So yeah, corporations. So all these things individually, you can create through contract. But we've now come to a world where governments have created statutes where you now have to apply for a corporate license. And you pay hundreds of dollars and you gotta get a lawyer to sign the paperwork and stuff. So for a lot of times, being a sole proprietor, which means you're not a corporation and you are fully liable for your business, it's more economical. And then as you grow, as you bring on more partners and add more complexities to your business, then you choose to become a corporation later. Any other questions? Here's another fun example. Let's say we've got a bird's eye view of some land. There's some property here, we can call it A. And then there's another property here, I'm gonna call this B. And then there are a bunch of other properties on the side. Call this C, D, E. Guy in A wants to get to E. How does he do it? Can he do it? Yes?
He has to ask for permission.
He has to ask for permission? So otherwise he'd be committing trespass, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Anyone have a different take? Yes?
Teleportation is unrealistic expectations.
Yes.
They're allowed to move through these property, probably along with certain paths.
So because teleportation doesn't exist, and someone needs to get from point A to point E, then they should be allowed to pass through some area. Yes?
If B property owner isn't using the sky or the ground for anything, through libertarianism, can either dig a tunnel or build a bridge over that doesn't obstruct his property at all.
Yeah.
So then we can travel.
Yeah, so that's a good idea. But let's say that's out of the question.
Okay.
Okay? So, any other ideas? So, the point up there is that you do have rights. We call these easements. Easements. So these are paths through other people's property that you're allowed to take to get to point A to point C or whatever. Now it's not always a donut like this. Sometimes you've been traveling through some plot of land for centuries as nomads. And then eventually some guy comes in and claims an entire area, but then you say, hey, I've been traveling through this area first. You have an easement through that area, even though you don't own that area. It's still someone else's property. You still have a right to travel through it. Easements can get pretty complicated too. Any questions so far on easements? Okay. What if A was unowned? Oh, sorry, yes.
What is an easement? It's like a contract kind of?
An easement is a right of way. It's a right of traveling between an area. It's a pathway that doesn't physically exist and there's not a road, but it's just a right to travel through someone else's property. It's a right to travel through someone else's property. Yes?
Is that like granted by somebody, or are you saying?
Again, sorry.
Is that like granted by the government or something? Or
No,
you're saying
so
it's just-
easements arise through common law. Easements arise through common law. Yes?
Yeah, so this wouldn't be like an actual like trail or something that's like.
It doesn't have to be a trail.
Like it would just be something like
Yeah.
people's property and who people simply want to pass it. What would be like a date, like a example of this today?
So in England, there's some parts of England where you're allowed to fish by the ocean on certain days of the year. And if you have property by the ocean, And people are allowed to come onto your property and even set up a camp for a couple of days. It's your property, but other people are allowed to come up and set up camp.
Because that happened like a thing.
Because that's always been a thing. It's always been a thing, and then you knew that when you bought that property, that it's always been a thing. Any other questions? So now, what if A was unowned and E wanted to own A? Would they be allowed to have an easement? Who says yes? Who says no? So a couple of hands for yes, 0 hands for no. Who said yes? Why yes?
Why not? No.
Yeah, why not? So there's something called the Blockian proviso. Which means that if there's unowned land somewhere, you gotta have a right to go and own it. It's part of libertarianism. This guy named Walter Block. So last few minutes of class, I want to go over the quiz, and especially the last question on the quiz. You guys remember the last question on the quiz? I got you a free ticket to see Drake. I got you a free ticket to see Drake. But there's another concert happening the same night. Billie Eilish. You all love Billie Eilish. Right? So, none of you, out of this whole class, only 2 of you got this question right. Okay? So here's the situation. You have a free Drake ticket. Right? And then there's a Billie Eilish concert.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a Billie Eilish concert happening the same night. All right, happening the same night as the Drake concert. You're usually willing to pay up to $50 for this Billie Eilish concert, but it's now available for purchase for $40. The question is, what is the opportunity cost of seeing Drake? What's the opportunity cost of seeing Drake? Let's remember, what was opportunity cost? What is opportunity cost? Opportunity cost. What is opportunity cost? Yes?
Is the potential gain lost by choosing something?
It's the potential
Gain.
It's potential gain. You said you kept
Lost.
going. The potential gain lost.
When you choose.
Okay, that's right. But does anyone have a more elegant way of expressing that? Yes.
It's the next best option that you could have chosen if you did make the decision you did make.
It's the next best option. Yes.
The sacrifice you're making to obtain something else.
Yeah, the sacrifice you're making to obtain something else. Your gain. So what is your gain of going to Billie Eilish? Yes. $10? What's your gain of going to Billie Eilish? Anyone have a different idea?
It's $50 because you value that experience at $50.
Okay, anyone have a different idea? So, the most common answer on the quiz was that your opportunity cost was $40. Right? But I just told you, everyone except 2 of you got that wrong. So why isn't it $40? It's because you paid $40, but you would have paid $50. So your net benefit is $10. Does that make sense?
But you only paid 40, therefore your net benefit.
Your net, the value that you're actually giving up is $10. Because it's the 50 that you would have gotten minus the 40 that you actually had to spend to get it.
I get it. Right, so let's say.
Okay, follow-up question. Follow-up question. The University of Guelph owns some big apartments, a lot of apartments in the city here. If they gave those apartments to students, would they lose any money? They already own the apartments. If they gave those apartments to students for free, would the university lose any money? Who says yes? Who says no? No one put their hand up for no. So for those of you saying yes, what's their cost? How much are they losing? Yes.
Utilities stuff of the building?
The utilities, those are the costs, and they still have to pay those whether who's living there and who isn't.
But doesn't it go up?
Well, if they wouldn't be giving it to them, they'd be doing something else with the rest. So what's the cost? Yes.
The rent that they could have charged.
The rents that they could have charged. The opportunity cost of giving away something for free is the money that you could have gotten paying or getting someone else to pay you for it. So that's the end of this day. The rest of you, good luck with your hearings.